The storm had rolled over the Montana plains just before sunrise, leaving the earth soaked and the sky streaked with pale gold. Out beyond the split-rail fence of Whitaker Ranch, a figure stood shivering, her coat too thin for the October wind. Her hair clung to her face, damp and tangled, and in her arms she held nothing but a worn canvas bag. She looked like a ghost against the rolling fields, fragile, misplaced, almost invisible. From the porch, Samuel Whitaker watched her. He'd been up since 4, as always, feeding the horses and mending the east fence. 53 years old, tall and weathered, Samuel was a man of steady habits and fewer words. He didn't get visitors at dawn, especially not young women who looked like they'd walked through hell to reach his front gate. He wiped his hands on his jeans and stepped down the porch steps, boots crunching on the gravel. "You lost," he called out, his voice low but carrying in the cold air. The woman flinched as if his voice were a slap. "No," she whispered, barely audible. Her words trailed off. She clutched her bag tighter, eyes darting like a trapped bird's. Samuel stopped a few feet from her. The morning smelled of wet hay and distant rain. "You're soaked," he said. "Come on up to the porch. You can warm up before you go wherever you're going." She hesitated, then shook her head quickly. "I can't," she murmured. I'm not worth anything." The way she said it, flat, like a fact she'd rehearsed 1,000 times, hit Samuel harder than he expected. He'd seen plenty of lost souls pass through town, but there was something in her voice, a quiet surrender, that reminded him of the years after his wife died. The nights he'd stared at the ceiling and wondered if the world would notice if he vanished. He took a slow step closer. "What's your name?" Her eyes flickered to his face, then down again. "Lena." "Well, Lena," Samuel said gently, "you're worth enough for a cup of coffee and a dry place to sit. That's not negotiable." He turned and walked toward the porch without waiting to see if she'd follow. For a heartbeat, she stayed frozen at the gate. Then, like a stray dog testing a stranger's kindness, she trailed after him. Inside the ranch house, the kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and wood smoke. Samuel handed her a towel and gestured to the old oak table. She sat stiffly, like a child in the principal's office, eyes fixed on her hands. "You from around here?" he asked, pouring her a mug. She shook her head. "No. Running from something." This time she looked up, startled. "I'm not. I didn't do anything wrong." "I didn't say you did." He pushed the mug toward her. "Coffee's hot." She wrapped her hands around it but didn't drink. "I shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I don't have money. I don't have anywhere to go. I thought maybe I could help with horses or cleaning or anything, just for a day. But I'm not," she swallowed. "I'm not worth anything." Samuel leaned on the counter, studying her. She couldn't be more than 25. Thin, pale, clothes a size too big. She looked like someone who'd been told, over and over, that she was a burden until she believed it. He remembered his father's words when Samuel was a boy: "If you see someone drowning, you don't ask if they can swim. You just throw the rope." "Lena," he said quietly, "I don't know what put that idea in your head. But out here, everyone's worth something. Even the old mare in the barn, she's worth her weight in calm for the young colts. You think you can clean stalls?" She blinked at him, startled. "Yes," she said after a pause. "I can." "Good. You'll start there. I'll pay you at the end of the week." "That's how it works." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that?" Samuel shrugged. "Because someone did it for me once." The days stretched into weeks. Lena woke before dawn, pulled on borrowed boots, and worked in the barn alongside Samuel. At first she moved like a shadow, flinching at sudden noises, mumbling apologies for mistakes that didn't matter. But the horses didn't care about her past. They cared about calm hands, steady movements, and the smell of oats. Slowly, her shoulders straightened. She began humming under her breath as she brushed their coats, soft melodies that floated through the rafters. Samuel watched from a distance. He didn't ask questions he didn't need to. He just gave her space, tools, and small lessons: how to mend a fence, how to read the sky for weather, how to drive the old truck down the gravel road. Little by little, the ranch began to look less like a refuge and more like a place she belonged. One evening, after the sun had slipped behind the hills, Lena stood at the corral fence, watching a newborn foal wobble to its feet. "I've never seen anything so fragile," she said, voice full of awe. "And so determined." Samuel leaned on the post beside her. That's how life works, he said. Fragile but determined. She glanced at him, her face in the twilight softer than he'd ever seen it. Do you really think, she hesitated. Do you really think someone like me can change? He turned toward her, eyes steady. I don't think it. I've seen it. Winter came early that year. The wind off the mountains cut sharp as knives, and the ranch demanded more work than ever. One afternoon, Samuel found Lena in the barn, coughing, her hands trembling as she tried to lift a bale of hay. He took it from her with a frown. You're burning up, he said. You're sick. I'm fine, she protested weakly. I have to work, you have to rest. His voice left no room for argument. He led her back to the house, settled her on the old couch, and brought her soup. She stared at it as if it were a foreign language. No one's ever taken care of me before, she said, barely audible. Samuel sat in the chair opposite her, his weathered hands clasped. There's a first time for everything, he said. She started to cry, quietly at first, then with the deep, shuddering sobs of someone whose dam had finally broken. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm sorry for being here. I'm sorry for taking your kindness. I don't deserve, stop. His voice was gentle but firm. He reached across and took her hand. You don't have to earn being treated like a human being. Not here. She looked at their joined hands as if it were the first solid thing she'd touched in years. I'm not worth anything, she whispered again, a habit too old to break. Samuel's thumb brushed over her knuckles. You're worth more than you know, he said. And one day you'll see it. Weeks passed. Lena's health returned, and so did something else, a spark. She began sketching the horses in the evenings, filling an old notebook Samuel found in a drawer. He caught her once, sitting in the hayloft, drawing the sunrise over the pastures. You're good, he said. She blushed. It's nothing. It's not nothing. You've got an eye for it. She looked at him shyly. I used to dream of being an artist, she confessed. Before everything. You still can, he said simply. I don't even know who I am anymore. Samuel smiled faintly. That's the best place to start. Spring returned with wildflowers and mud. One morning, Samuel drove Lena into town to pick up supplies. At the feed store, an older woman approached them, eyes widening. Lena, she said, voice sharp with recognition. Lena froze, color draining from her face. Mrs. Kemp, she murmured. The woman's eyes narrowed. You have some nerve showing up here after what you did. Lena's breath came shallow. Samuel felt her stiffen beside him. He put a hand on her shoulder. Is there a problem? He asked quietly. Mrs. Kemp sniffed. This girl abandoned her foster placement last year. Left without a word. Caused all kinds of trouble. Lena's eyes brimmed with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. Her voice cracked. I couldn't stay. I couldn't, that's enough, Samuel said gently but firmly. He turned to Mrs. Kemp. Whatever happened then, she's working for me now. She's earning her keep. That's all you need to know. Mrs. Kemp huffed but said nothing more. When she left, Lena trembled like a leaf. I told you, she whispered. I'm not worth anything. Samuel turned her to face him, his hands steady on her shoulders. You listen to me, Lena, he said. You're not your past. You're not what someone else decided you were. You're here. You're working. You're alive. That's worth everything. Something in his tone made her believe him, if only for a heartbeat. By summer, the ranch looked different, brighter, somehow. Lena's sketches hung on the kitchen wall. She laughed now, easily, her voice carrying across the fields. She'd learned to ride, to mend fences, to cook biscuits the way Samuel liked them. But more than that, she'd learned to look people in the eye again. On a warm evening in July, they sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the hills. Crickets sang in the grass. Lena held a letter in her hands, trembling. It's from the community college in Billings, she said. They're offering me a place in their art program. I applied months ago. I didn't think I'd get in. Samuel's heart swelled. That's wonderful, he said. Tears filled her eyes. I wouldn't even have tried without you. He shook his head. You did that yourself. No, she said softly. You believed in me first. She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time she didn't see a man rescuing her. She saw a man who had once been lost himself, who had chosen kindness because he knew what it felt like to need it. I'm scared, she admitted. That's how you know it matters, he said. She took a deep breath. I want to make you proud. You already have. The night before she left for college, Lena stood by the corral one last time. The foal she'd watched in her first week was now a strong young horse, kicking up dust under the stars. Samuel joined her, hands in his pockets. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You don't owe me thanks, he replied. She swallowed hard. When I came here, I told you I wasn't worth anything. He smiled, lines deepening around his eyes. And what do you believe now? She looked at the horse, at the fields, at the man who'd given her a chance when she had nothing. I think, she took a shaky breath. I think I was wrong. Samuel reached out and took her hand, just as he had that night on the couch. You were never nothing, Lena. You just needed someone to remind you. Her fingers tightened around his. I'll come back, she said. I'll visit. I'll be here, he said. This is still your home. For the first time, the words, your home, didn't make her flinch. They made her stand taller. As the stars spread across the sky, Lena felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. She wasn't the same girl who had arrived trembling at the gate. She was someone who had been seen, believed in, and given the space to grow. And because of that, she would carry the ranch, and Samuel's kindness, wherever she went. Years later, a letter arrived at Whitaker Ranch with a painting enclosed, a vast field under a stormy sky, a single figure at a fence, and a man walking toward her with an outstretched hand. On the back was a single line, written in flowing script, I'm worth something. Thank you for showing me. Samuel pinned it above the kitchen table, right next to the sunrise sketches. Outside, the horses grazed, the hills rolled on, and the ranch remained what it had always been, a place where the fragile and determined could find their footing. And somewhere in a studio hundreds of miles away, a young woman painted a future she'd once thought impossible.